What's going on, everyone? Today we're going to talk about how I lost $400,000. The story is pretty interesting, so make sure to stick around and watch the entire video because I do think you're going to be at least entertained by it. It's been entertaining for me, and I think it's fun to tell. It's fun to tell the story. So I think the best way to start the story is to kind of explain how I made the money, because ironically, how I made it is how I lost it. But my entire life, I was never really that good at making a lot of money. My parents didn't have a lot of money. I grew up in a trailer park in West Virginia, ironically. Yeah, I guess people would call me a redneck, or something of that sort. White trash, I guess, is what I guess some people would say about me. But anyway, I never, I didn't come from any sort of substantial financial means. My dad was a hard worker, and he worked very hard to put food on the table. But no one ever really showed me how to manage money. No one ever really showed me how to make money either. So, my entire life, I never really had a lot of money. I always had enough to put gas in my car or food, but I always drove around. I drove shitty cars. I lived with people. I never had a degree. I dropped out of high school, dropped out of college. I do have a GED. Go me. But I'm not what society would consider most of my life as successful. I guess you would call me, I guess society would basically say I was kind of like a fuck up, But anyway, I came to a point where I discovered crypto trading. And this was back kind of in the early days when the market was much more amateur and easier to trade. But I really took to trading like a duck in water. I loved the market sentiment, price action. I loved how the markets moved. They were like living, breathing. I loved finding loopholes in the market. I loved being able to exploit edges. What I call edges is the ability to see something that other people can't see. And when you find an edge, you can trade that way for a long time, and you can make a lot of money. And that's how precisely I slowly over time built up my account. Was I kept going back to the markets and trading, and over time I ended up with the account size that I did. And to me, looking back at what I had and how I really had nothing most of my life, I felt pretty well off. It enabled me to be able to eat at restaurants I'd never been able to eat at, and travel and experience things that I never thought I'd ever get to experience. I never thought that I'm eating at this restaurant with this nice food. You have to understand, when I was growing up, I'd ask my dad, "Hey, can we go to Longhorn?" And he'd be like, "We're going to Sam's Club to eat pizza." I grew up eating rice in a bowl, eating rice every morning, getting driven to school in a pickup truck. So you have to understand, what I did to me was very substantial. It was very, I felt good about myself. It did make me feel successful. I felt like I was no longer a failure in the eyes of society. Now I realize that it doesn't matter how much you have or what you don't have. That doesn't make up your success in society. But at the time, you believe that. Everyone, I think, believes that to some extent. That's why they have the phrase "keeping up with the Joneses." But anyway, I was never really a big spender. I like to buy good food and I like to travel, but I was never the person that wanted watches. I don't even own watches, man. I paid $2 on this haircut here. But I was never a big spender, man. I never cared about cars. I never cared about having nice things like that. To me, you buy something, and then a couple weeks later, it loses its nostalgia, and it's just like another thing that you own. And so I was never a big spender. So I didn't really, ironically, I never spent any of my money. I never really spent any of it, other than going on a vacation here and there. But so that's how I made it. I made it trading. I made it crypto trading specifically, and that's how I lost it. I talked about this in my other videos. I have always, my entire life, suffered with mental health problems, anxiety, depression, and I believe that was caused by childhood trauma, fighting in my home life, an uneasy home life, a very violent home life, led me to developing just I never felt safe really anywhere, which leads to anxiety, depersonalization, derealization, having a lot of trauma, my dad dying unexpectedly at work, just different things throughout my life have led me to, throughout my life, having anxiety and that sort of things. And I've tried medicine, and I guess I would be considered, I was until I had a spiritual awakening, but I was considered as treatment-resistant anxiety, or treatment-resistant, depersonalization, or something like that. But anyway, I had sort of a nervous breakdown. I guess it would, now I know it's a breakthrough, but at the time you would consider it like a breakdown. And in that state, I started trading, and the decisions that I made, as you would assume, weren't the best, weren't the soundest decisions. Looking back, I was doing things I never would have done, I never should have done in a million years, breaking rules that I never should have broken. My decisions were very emotional because I emotionally was not in my right mind. I was not in my sound mind. And so, I was breaking rules that I never would, trading rules I never should have broken because I was out of my mind, Anyway, that accompanied by the recent market implosion led me to losing around $400,000. Now let's get to how I feel about it. Well, of course, no one feels good about that. No one feels like, that was a good thing. But also, keeping it into perspective for me is how I approach it. I have experience with looking at things in my life that are kind of beyond my control, and at this point, it is beyond my control. That are beyond my control, and not judging that experience, but observing it as just another experience in my awareness. And that helps me to find it, like look at it and say, well, that's interesting. That's kind of interesting, as opposed to being like, this is the end of the world. Oh my gosh. And I saw a recent post that really broke my heart. This crypto trader, unalived himself. And that's very, very heartbreaking and sad. And I'm sure there are people out there who've unalived themselves for the amount that I've lost. And that's tragic. That's sad, because you don't want to see anybody get to that level of despair over money. It's just money at the end of the day. Like it's tough, and you don't want to. I'm not downplaying it. I'm sorry if I'm not a little bit more depressed. I don't know what else to. That's hard to be depressed when you're sitting right here. Let me tell you. I mean, geez, I can't get over the beauty every day I see in the world. Where I live, the landscape, the ocean, the mountains. I'm literally looking at like a volcano right now. It's right there. And so that just I don't know. It's just hard for me to stay upset about it. But I was never really like that upset by it, because I realized that the whole point to my life is I want to live an exciting life. And I want to live a life that is like you can look back and be like, dang, dude, like what? Like that happened to you? Like what? Like, my gosh, how was that? Like, I want to. You know what they say? Either read something worth, what is it? Live a life worth writing about, or something like that. I don't know the quote, but that always been me. I always said, like, I want to live an exciting life. I want my life to be an adventure. I want my life to be like, dang, dude, like what? That to me, if that's happening, then my life's successful. And definitely losing that much money puts me in that category. And other things, the earthquakes and whatever else, you know, my entire, I feel like that, you know, my life is successful because it's exciting, it's adventurous, it's every day feels like a new experience. And in that, I'm able to find peace, I'm able to find stillness, I'm able to sit with God every single day. I come down here and just sit, and that's prayer, you know. That is, that's the most sought after thing. And so here's another thing. I feel like I'm already rich. And I don't mean this like metaphorically or woo-hoo. I do feel like I've won the lottery, absolutely. And I'll tell you why. Because I'm able to sit with nothing and just be happy and just be at peace. I don't feel like I have to add anything to the present moment. I can just sit and I'm just in peace. Like, I'm able to sit here and just be in peace. And I can do that at any time. And I do that all the time, in fact. I feel like I could just be at my house and close my eyes and I'm just in peace. And I don't need to add anything to the moment. I don't need to swipe on my phone. I don't need to do anything. I just sit there in complete peace. I can just lay in a hammock for hours. I can just go and swim in the ocean and be in peace. I can just, and so I feel like that's very hard for a lot of people to do, and I can do that effortlessly. So I feel like I've already won the lottery. And plus I'm able to, you know, see experiences like this for what they are. You know, it's not the end of the world. It's a story to tell. It's just something to write about. It's an adventure. We got people down there laughing, having a good time. And that's definitely what it's all about. So yeah, I already feel rich. I already feel like I won the lottery. So, you know, I don't know. I don't really feel like anything bad's happened to me. Now, I understand the gravity of the situation. I understand what that money is. If anyone understands it, it's me. I made it inch by inch, little by little, over years. So I understand what that is. But also, I understand that losing it doesn't deserve me sitting around crying about it, worrying about it. In fact, like I said, to me, it's an adventure. It's a story to tell, and I'm telling the story. And so yeah. Anyway, if you got something out of this video, if you enjoyed it, if it entertained you, maybe share, smash that like button, and comment, because I love reading comments. And until next time, I'm gonna get back to this view. I'll talk to you all later. Peace.